We have a variety of NHL news to talk about tonight. We have the debut of Adam Fantilli in Columbus. We also have lots of action we want to talk about from last night. We have a fine in LA for Philip Danault, a big signing in Buffalo with Owen Power. Could we see the return to the NHL of a couple of players like CBJ Puljujarvi, maybe even Alex Formenton? And we have some trade talk as well to talk about, including the Ottawa Senators, Calgary Flames, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Columbus Blue Jackets and Vancouver Canucks. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey as we prepare for night 3 of NHL action of the 2023-24 NHL season. We have a lot of news to talk about today. Before we jump into a lot of the news, I do want to quickly kind of recap what happened on night number 2 of the NHL last night. It was quite a lot of goals, lots of exciting action. For example, we saw Connor Bedard's first ever goal in the NHL. Unfortunately for Chicago, it was the only one they put up on the board last night. They did lose to the Boston Bruins 3-1, but Bedard had a nice wraparound first goal, so that's something else you can check off the list. Get the first goal out of the way. It was really nice to see. We saw the Calgary Flames have a emotional family tribute to the Snow family. Of course, honoring recently passed away of Chris Snow. Chris recently succumbed to ALS not long ago after close to a 5-year battle. Today is actually his memorial service being held at the Saddle Dome, and they had the Snow family with his wife and children there to do the ceremonial first face-off last night. Obviously, Chris had worked for the Flames for a long time. His family was very much involved, and they lived very publicly with the struggles and battle of ALS for the last 4 to 5 years as well. So even though they're not really, as well known or famous, if you want to call it that, they have become that because of everything connected to Chris. And certainly they have a ton of support, which is what they've learned through this process throughout the organization, the community. And when I say community, I mean the hockey community in general. I know Kelsey Snow talked about how they were worried, like she was worried about being alone, and she's like, I don't feel alone now. There's been so many people throughout the entire hockey community, which spans a large area, that there's support everywhere. So that's great to see. I'm glad they're feeling it. It was emotional, but very well done by the Calgary Flames. They even had his son Cohen be on the bench for warm-ups and get to hang out with the team a bit. So very, very nice touch and extremely well done by the Flames to honor their assistant general manager. We also saw the Battle of Toronto and Montreal, which seems to be traditional now for their opening game of the NHL season. We saw a game that was lots of goals. 5-5 went to a shootout. The Leafs ultimately won on a Mitch Marner shootout win. Austin Matthews got off to a hot start, scoring a hat trick last night. So a great start there. The Habs had multiple leads, and the Leafs had to come back and battle back and use that offensive firepower to get the ultimate W here. We saw the Canucks absolutely manhandle the Oilers 8-1. What an embarrassing loss for the Oilers. I mean, they were in Vancouver. Brock Besser had a 4-goal game. Absolutely great to see him explode like that. I mean, he's gone through so much on and off the ice the past couple of years. That's phenomenal for him. Great for the Canucks and not great for the Oilers. And to be honest, Jack Campbell was pulled after, I know I was watching the game, I can't remember how many goals he let in before they pulled him. I want to say it was 4 or 5. But to be honest, I don't know if you can really fault Campbell that much. The defense was bad in front of him, and some of the chances that Vancouver was getting that this shouldn't have been getting. So we'll see how the Oilers respond. They get to play each other again on the weekend here in Edmonton, so we'll see how that goes, if they can bounce back. Ottawa went into Carolina shorthanded, ultimately lost the game 5-3. For the most part, they had a few defensive breakdowns, and which is the same old story with them that we've seen the last few years, but Carolina, being such a strong team, capitalized on most of their mistakes, which is where they got the goals from. I thought Korpisalo was good, even though he did allow 5. I don't really think there's one I think for sure you can say he should have had. Otherwise, I think he was actually really good and could have made it. It would have been worse without him. They had a lot of great chances. Defensively, they need to tighten up, but ultimately they fought back, get it to 3-3 in the third period, and then Carolina, like I said, They got a couple mistakes and buried it for a late lead, and that was over. The Avalanche beat the Kings 5-2. Multiple point nights for a few top players, including McKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen had a 4-point night. Jonathan Drouin got on the score sheet his first game with the Avalanche as well. So certainly lots of great action last night. From that, we also did see our first fine of the season. LA Kings centerman Philip Danault has been fined $5,000 for slashing against Avalanche center Ross Colton. And from when I watched the play, it looked like a pretty nasty, deliberate slash. So I think the fine is definitely justified and warranted. And I believe Colton was okay. I didn't get to see all of that game. I was watching more of Edmonton, Vancouver, but I know he was there and participating later in the game, so I believe Colton's okay, which is good news for him. But the fine for Danault, definitely justified for sure. In tonight's action, I said you're going to get another big rookie debut, and that's Adam Fantilli, projected to be the second overall pick in the 23 NHL draft. Ended up going third to the Jackets, where he was quite thrilled to be. Of course, he was really thrilled to go to Columbus. Obviously loved playing against Ohio State and everything in college hockey, and just absolutely loved the area. So he was thrilled with that, and he's going to get to make his debut tonight, actually on his birthday. Not something you get to see very often. So Adam Fantilli comes in, not quite the fanfare and hype that you get with Connor Bedard, but he is a really, really good player and should be a huge part of the Jackets' future. So I'll be curious to see how he does. I know as I record this, they were doing warm-ups. I like his fellow draft class members went no bucket on the warm-up tonight, like Bedard did last night. I know technically that has been outlawed by the NHL. It's supposed to be a finable offense. We haven't heard anything about some of the rookies going without their helmets in the warm-ups last night. Now, I know that, and I never noticed with Bedard. I know he did his rookie lap with no helmet, but I don't know if he later went to grab the helmet for once they get like the full warm-up going, once the full team was out there, because that's maybe a technicality, I guess. I don't know. I've never really noticed that part. I only really paid attention to the rookie lap, and then, of course, after I tuned into the game once it had started, obviously the big, Bedard versus Crosby matchup on the first night, I should say, and 2 nights ago. So I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, with Fantilli and, obviously we saw Bedard and Korchinski do it in Chicago the other night. Be curious to see if this continues. This is a trend. And if the NHL actually does anything about it or not. Now, for tonight in Columbus, new head coach Pascal Vincent, certainly not afraid to make waves, made some interesting choices for the healthy scratches. They're actually scratching Liam Foudy, Adam Boqvist, and Kent Johnson tonight. Now, Foudy and Boqvist, not so shocking, but Johnson is. He is such a talented player and will be a huge part of that team for years to come, assuming as long as he stays there, of course. But very, very talented. It sounds like Vincent just basically said that some other players in training camp had a better camp and wants to reward them. I think this is kind of his way of trying to push Johnson. I don't know. I mean, it certainly seems like an interesting choice. I don't know if there's anything more to it that we don't know. But we'll see how Kent Johnson responds. It's expected to only be a 1-game scratch, and he's expected to get in the lineup on the weekend. So we'll see where that goes. But certainly some decisions that we didn't expect to see. Of course, there is a video on the channel earlier as well talking about the Owen Power extension. We got that news last night, I believe, in the early games. It was around, I think, the second intermission when the announcement came out that the Sabres and Power had finalized the extension. We knew around the time that the Dahlin extension was announced, which was not that long ago, that there was word that they were hoping to do Dahlin and Power and do one big announcement for both players at the same time. Unfortunately, Dahlin's deal was signed, sealed, delivered. Powers was not to the finish line yet, so they decided not to do that. But at the same time here, this is a pretty massive extension for Owen Power. It's 7 years. He doesn't do the 8-year deal like Dahlin did, and like we saw some other young defensemen like Jake Sanderson do recently. But 7 years gives him an average annual value at 8.35. That's certainly a hefty cap hit. But like I said about Jake Sanderson, same idea. Power and Sanderson are extremely comparable in my opinion. I think they're both elite young defensemen, and it might seem like a high number right now, but give him out of the 7 years, I'd say at the very least by year 2, it'll be viewed upon as being very reasonable, and later it'll look like a steal. I said the same thing about Sanderson. I know there was lots of non-Sens fans who weren't as familiar with him that disagreed and had some different opinions. Be curious to see what those same people think of Power. To me, if you're going to like one extension, you're going to like the other, or you're going to dislike them both. I mean, in my opinion, I personally don't see Power being better than Sanderson. I think they're very, very comparable. So the fact that his cap hit is 0.3 higher, I'd say that the Sens have a slight edge in that sense, but at the same time, the main difference there is the number of years they did on the contract. Obviously, Sanderson did 8 years versus the 7, which got the number down a little bit. So really, that's why I'm not really saying it's better or worse. It's very, very comparable. So I like the contract. They've locked up their core. Buffalo and Ottawa on very similar trajectories. Obviously, the Sabres locked up Power. They just got done doing Dahlin. Of course, not long ago, they did Cousins. They did Thompson, Matthias Samuelsson. So they've got like a 5-player core locked up long term. They have a few other guys that are on 2-3 years that we'll see how they fit, and some other youngsters that are trying to be part of that next wave as well that aren't quite established enough for these longer-term deals. Be curious to see how things work for Devin Levi this year and how things work for him, because that'll be one of the next big ones that they have to work on. And like I said, obviously the Sens are in a similar boat with Stützle, Tkachuk, Norris, Sanderson, Chabot, Batherson, etc. These two cores are going to be going head-to-head in the same division for a long, long time. So ultimately, curious to see how they kind of are doing very similar strategies, which should work out hopefully for both clubs and make a very competitive Atlantic division for a long time as well. Now, could we also see the return to the NHL by a few different names that we haven't heard of in a while? One being Jesse Puljujarvi. Of course, Puljujarvi started his career with the Oilers, played there for a long time. Last year, he finally was traded, finished in Carolina. Carolina did not qualify him because he was still a restricted free agent. He was having health issues. He needed to have a double hip surgery. Now, word is from TSN Insider Trading tonight that Puljujarvi should be ready for a return to be healthy enough to play sometime in the next month. So right now he's back in Europe, finishing his rehab and recovery. That's where the projections are right now. And he's going to be looking to make a return to the NHL. He sounds like he's willing to do a 1-year fairly cheap contract. I don't know if it'll go league minimum or close to it, but for teams that are maybe still searching for that middle 6 or bottom 6 winger, Puljujarvi might be a guy that they can look to here in the next few weeks, depending on how things unfold. Yes, he's had his struggles offensively, but analytics-wise, like his defensive metrics have been quite good. So I think for some teams, he could be a third-line player and be a more of a defensive, responsible player who can chip in a little bit offensively. So we'll see where that goes. But Puljujarvi is going to be looking to make a return to the league sometime in the next month or so. And could we see a return for Alex Formenton, the former Ottawa Senator who's basically been exiled and unsigned, going on second season now? Obviously linked to that 2018 World Junior team for Team Canada that's been under investigation, but he's certainly not the only one. Several of those players from that team are playing in the NHL with long-term contracts. Some are having a difficult time right now. Some aren't. Some are more established than others, of course, but Formenton had no issues with his performance before that was announced. He was really viewed upon as an up-and-coming star with the Senators, mostly a third-line player, but still a really good one at that. And then they didn't sign him, and a lot of people just automatically assumed that he was connected to maybe that kind of ensues some guilty parts, right? Well, we can't say that, but do the Senators know something we don't? I don't know, and nobody's going to say that, right? So it just seems weird that they could never come to terms after all this time, when really, he wouldn't. It's not like he was looking for a massive payday of $10 million and they wouldn't give it to him. This guy's would have been at most a $2-3 million player. Similar scenario that we're finding the Sens in right now with Shane Pinto. So why was he not signed? It just is bizarre. Now, he did re-sign today with the Swiss League team that he played with last year. Now, the contract is until December, and that team has put out a statement saying that they're aware that there's an investigation on the junior team that he was a part of in 2018. But as of right now, the players on that team have not been charged with anything. So, innocent until proven guilty, which is the right approach. I think they should all be taking that. So he's going to play there until December at the very least. He has the option to extend or to go back to the NHL. So essentially, they said that if anything changes and they learn new information that comes from the investigation, and basically if he ends up getting charged with something, they have every right to terminate the contract, and he'll stop getting paid from the time that information comes to be. If nothing comes to be and what he's telling them is true, that he's not involved, then he will be able to play there. Now, of course, to play in the NHL, you have to sign by December the 1st, so that's why the contract is structured that way, and then he'll make a decision at that point. He'll either talk to them about re-signing or try to make an NHL return. I don't see it happening with the Senators. Could they? I mean, not, and that has nothing to do with their cap situation. That's just the fact that he hasn't been signed in like a year and a half. Why all of a sudden magically would they come to terms? Like, I would imagine he has some, I would think he's got some resentment towards them for not signing. I don't know. I don't want to put words or feelings in his mouth, of course, but like, it just seems bizarre. It's hard to imagine that they would do that. I would think that if he was going to return, they would trade him. Nobody's going to want to trade for him probably until they know that he's cleared. At this point, the last we had heard about the 2018 investigation was that it's believed, and this is only rumor, that the London Police Department didn't want to proceed with pressing charges. The NHL has conducted its own investigation. It's believed that they have their results, and I think they were kind of waiting on police. But if the police don't want to press charges, they probably just going to be sitting there with nothing happening. Is the NHL going to ever do something with their investigation results? Belief is it's kind of hard to punish players or invoke any kind of disciplinary action if there's no legal implications. If they haven't been found guilty of anything or charged with anything, it's kind of hard to impose a punishment. Is it not? Like, right? So it's hard to say. But either way, I think Alex Formenton, if he is cleared of any wrongdoing, will definitely be looking to make a return to the NHL. Obviously, he'll make a lot more money because at this point, he's losing millions of dollars by not being able to play. And we'll go from there. I don't know, but it sounds like he's trying to figure out a return sometime in the next few months. So we'll see where that goes. Speaking of Ottawa, though, I'll stay with them. Obviously, on Insider Trading tonight on TSN, Darren Dreger talking about the fact that Pierre Dorion is trying really hard to create cap space to get Pinto under contract. There's a belief, and I can't say this is truth because it's only a rumor, but there's belief that there's basically an agreement in place between Pinto and the Sens, and that they just need to find the space to execute the deal. It's just that simple. Believed to be a 2-year deal, but you can't quote me and say that's the fact. That's just a rumor. But at the end of the day, Dreger said names like Matthew Joseph, Eric Brandstrom are the names being talked about. Matthew Joseph has had one heck of a preseason. He was one of their best players. Came out last night, had a heck of a game for the Sens last night, scored a goal again, played real well. The bottom six is kind of what led the way for the most part. Stützle scored one of their goals, but otherwise 2 of the other 3 goals came from the bottom 6. So, he's making it awfully difficult. He's either making it difficult for the Sens to want to move him, or he's making his value better so that teams will take him more willingly without taking an incentive. They shouldn't need an incentive to take this guy. He's a good player. And Ottawa doesn't really want to move him. They've unfortunately just put themselves into a cap predicament here, and largely by signing Vladimir Tarasenko. And we'll see if they turn out to regret that long-term or not. Time will tell. It's only one game, so we can't make any judgments. But Brandstrom and Joseph are both being discussed in trades. I would suspect that they're going to be looking to get this done ASAP in the next few days. But again, we don't know. There is speculation that Josh Norris will play sometime this weekend. If not Saturday, then Sunday. So hopefully that holds true and he gets in the lineup, because obviously at this point they're playing a player short. Getting him as a top 6 center back will be an absolutely huge upgrade. Will make a big difference. But they still need Pinto too. So we'll see where that goes. In Calgary, no real progress at all on an extension for Elias Lindholm. There's talk on Insider Trading tonight that they're nowhere near each other coming to an agreement. So obviously there's been lots of negotiating. We know Lindholm was looking for, it was rumored to be over 9 before, but with some of the other deals we've seen in the last few months, I know I've seen Elliot Friedman say he wouldn't be surprised if that number is actually higher and closer to 10. I don't know if he's going to get that, but obviously he's negotiating with what he wants, right? And they were hoping to have it done by the start of the season. That has not happened. It's kind of a pressure point for, players so they don't have to be dealing with this during the season so they can just focus on hockey. I would think that it's possible, but we'll have to see. We don't have reason to say right now that talks have stopped, but if they do, that's bad news because that means that they don't feel like they're anywhere close enough to keep going and it's not worth the distraction to the player. And if they stop talking and say we'll leave it to the end of the season, then this spells that it's probably going to lead to a trade. Because if the Flames, yes, they might be a playoff team, but they're in a tough spot. By no means are they guaranteed. If things are not trending as positive enough, they're going to want to probably have to take care of that, and that's when we're more likely to see a trade. But at this point, they're still really far apart, and at this point, until they get closer, it's easier to say that a trade is more likely than an extension. But again, time will tell. I know they also talked again on Insider Trading about Steven Stamkos and the Lightning. Pierre LeBrun had a conversation with Tampa Bay General Manager Julien Brisebois, and again, he said he was not taken by surprise by Stamkos' comments when training camp opened, saying how disappointed he was that they haven't had conversations about an extension. He said that they had conversations before the season as well, and when he told Stamkos that they weren't going to negotiate, he got the same reaction. So this wasn't a surprise to him that Stamkos felt that way at all, and he reiterated to LeBron that nothing is going to change. They're absolutely not looking at an extension. They will look at it at the end of the season. Stamkos also has a full no-move clause. So for us to sit here and say, well, maybe they'll trade him. Well, they won't trade him without his consent. And we know his heart is there, and he would prefer to be a Lightning for the rest of his career. But, is he hurt enough that extension talks haven't taken place that he'll want to move? I don't know. I can't say that, but I guess we'll see how the season goes. A lot of people like myself are thinking the Lightning might be lower in the standings than they have been in the past. If for any reason they're struggling and they're not in the mix for playoffs, then I would imagine that they're probably going to have some conversations with Stamkos to see if it's something he wants to do or not. But where he has full control, I wouldn't think the trade rumors will be as rampant on him as other players unless the word gets out that he really would like to move. And at that point, we don't know that. We can't say that. But at this point, we can also say that don't expect an extension anytime soon during the season. And in Columbus, another player they're really willing to move as well is Jack Roslovic. I know I listened to Aaron Portzline, who covers the Jackets for The Athletic, on the Jeff Merrick show today, and talking about a lot of things regarding the Jackets. But Merrick brought up the fact that he thought a good trade for them might be Connor Garland, who has made it known to the Canucks that he wants a trade. He's got a new agent in the last few days, and they're trying to facilitate a move. He wondered if Columbus might be a possible landing spot for Garland, and he knew that obviously that Roslovic's name has been out there in the rumor mill for some time, and talked to Portzline about it, and he said that the Jackets... he couldn't confirm that they had interest in Garland. He said they have had talks about him before, though. So if they want to renew that interest, maybe that is a deal that maybe makes more sense than we might think, and maybe Merrick's onto something. But he said ultimately, in Roslovic's case, it just hasn't worked out. I mean, they want it to work out. He's from Columbus. When he was involved in the trade with Laine going there from Winnipeg, it was a homecoming for him. It's not like the team doesn't want it to work out. It's just it hasn't. They've tried lots of things. It's still a struggle. They've taken away power play time. They've even moved him from center, where he's always played, to the wing now. You can tell his value within the organization has decreased tremendously, and a fresh start might be what's needed there, even though it's probably painful for him to leave his hometown team. But he's got to be able to do his thing, and if it's going to happen elsewhere, then that's just the way it's going to be. So look for a potential trade some point there regarding Roslovic, and maybe Garland is something that they could talk about and see if it works for both sides. It would be a deal for Vancouver where they could save some cap space, because Roslovic makes a fair bit less than Garland right now. So could be a savings and a swap in that regard, but I'm not sure how they feel about the player and if it's something they want to do. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.